Last session of the day. Thank you so much for being here. We'll try and keep it as pacey and as interesting as we can. We're going to cover cybersecurity, and I've got a wonderful panel I'm going to intro in a moment. But what's happened over the last year? Well, threats continue to surge, attacks are soaring. That's the reality of cyber today. Over the last 12 months, they surged by around 300%, depending what stat you're looking at, but it's never less than 300. And of course, the world has changed a lot in terms of the tech. We've got AI and Gen AI in particular playing a major role in cybersecurity. So how do leaders contend with the current cyber agenda, and how do we work to make sure that we can protect organizations and keep them safe? That's what we're going to cover in this panel, and let me do a very, very quick intro of our panel. To my left, we have Cate Pye, who is the cyber transformation lead at PA Consulting, partner in digital trust and cybersecurity, and has widespread experience across policy, strategy, and transformation in defense and security. We have Andrew, Detective Chief Superintendent Andrew Gould from the City of London Police, also National Cybercrime Lead for National Police Chiefs Council, and a global cybercrime expert for Interpol. Nina Kerkez is the Senior Director of Strategy at LexisNexis Risk Solutions. I should say that I said I'm going to try my best to get LexisNexis right, and I did it, but there you go. With responsibility for strategy and innovation and fantastic expertise across financial crime, fraud, analytics, and credit risk. Phil Larratt is the UK Operations Manager at Chainalysis, previously Senior Manager at the National Crime Agency, and has been leading investigations for years now on cryptocurrency crime, which is hugely interesting and we'll get into in a moment. And last but not least, Barry O'Donoghue, CEO and co-founder of Raidiam, global expert in smart data and trust frameworks. Barry has also helped steer the delivery of open banking and open finance initiatives globally. So we've got 25 minutes or so and quite a lot to cover. So let's just get stuck in, and I'm going to start with Cate and ask you, Cate, how should companies of all sizes balance the need for digital transformation with also implementing a robust cybersecurity strategy?
Thanks, Danny. There are a couple of things in this for me. So cybersecurity and the digital transformation any organization goes through has to be for the purpose of whatever the business has as its core aim. If it's a bank, if it's an investment organization, that's what it's there for. It's not there to do something whizzy in cybersecurity or in digital. It's there so that the digital and the built-in cybersecurity aids its core purpose. So for me, it's about understanding what you need to do with digital transformation, building cybersecurity into that from the outset, because retrofitting it later is so much more difficult. But also now in this day and age, it's not just looking at the systems, processes, and people elements. It's looking at the data and the AI and how you want that data and AI to be able to aid your business and your decision making, so that you're building that in as well as the cybersecurity to your digital transformation strategy.
So cyber is never a standalone.
Cyber is never a standalone. Digital is never a standalone. They're both a method to get your core business done in the right way.
So out of interest, looking at the people in front of me, how many of you suffered some kind of attack, a cyber attack, over the last 12 months? This is a very lucky and fortunate crowd, I have to say.
How many of you did and just don't know about it?
That's the second question. And that is the key with so much of this. So perfect segue, thank you, Cate, to Andrew. Andrew, you're dealing with cyber challenges that you see on a daily basis for companies of all sizes. How well equipped do you think companies are to deal with the cyber threats that they face today? And based on the fact that you know that companies don't have masses of resources, where should they focus their resources based on what you're seeing landscape-wise right now?
It's a really good question. So, obviously different companies will have different approaches, but I think a lot of companies will take the approach of being over-reliant on their managed service provider or whoever their IT provider is. They'll think, they'll ask some very basic questions. Have you got good cybersecurity? They'll get told, yeah, we've got very good cybersecurity. And they'll almost not have the confidence often to know what further questions to ask. So I think there's a real, people either ignore the problem, they're complacent about the problem, or they're very worried about it, and those that are often very worried about it are actually often in a very good place. I think a lot of organisations actually are in a stronger position than they realise. I think we probably, I don't think we over-egg the threat by any stretch. It's extremely serious, but I think actually we can get distracted by AI, deepfakes, quantum computing, all these myriad of different things that are happening almost at the speed of light, and just think, God, where do I start? I think for most organisations, just forget all that. It doesn't really matter where it's coming from. It doesn't really matter who's doing it, unless you're, certain niche organisations. Just concentrate on the basics. You will manage out 90% of this threat. We are actually much more capable and much better defended than we probably realise. We just need to help people feel a bit more confident to do the right thing.
And we'll come back later on to understanding what those basics look like. Because so much of this is about getting your cyber hygiene right, and Absolutely. The simplicity of it is actually the key to getting it right many times. We'll come back to that. Thank you, Andrew. Nina, at LexisNexis, you spend a lot of your time preventing fraud and cybercrime, but you also spend a lot of time stopping it. So based on what you've seen over the last 12 months or so, what lessons do you have to share from some of the case studies or kind of some of the experiences that you've had that would be beneficial for this audience?
Yeah, so I think what's really kind of coming out is the importance of a holistic view of identity when we are fighting criminals online or in sort of cyber and digital space. I'm not here to sell our product, but we do, one of the solutions that we have is really focused on digital identities. And when I talk about that, it's more about sort of device data and how people are behaving online rather than just digitizing physical identities, so your names, addresses, and so on. And kind of having that holistic view is really critical. So having both digitized data and digital identity data, so device data working together. Over the last year, we have worked with DCPCU, which is dedicated, I want to make sure I get this right, Dedicated Card and Payment Crime Unit, which is a kind of a joint venture between UK Finance, City of London Police, and Met Police. And we have been really sharing some of those digital attributes with them to identify mule networks online, and this has proven really successful. There were multiple arrests that came out of it. But what's really interesting in working with some of the agencies is that initially we used to focus on just one individual, one problem, one entity that is causing some challenges online. But even in those, in that focused, those anomalies being detected are actually showing that these are, of course, networks. It's never just one individual or one person. So we have managed to identify mule herders. So these are people that recruit and control those networks, which has led to multiple arrests. So kind of really interesting to observe that work that is happening with digital attributes being accessible to the agencies.
Thank you. And that's really helpful because, again, we'll come back later to actually unpacking some of those threats. Phil, we've run this cyber session for, is that rain?
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. No leaks, we're fine, so the show goes on. We hope. Phil, we've had a cyber panel now for a couple of years, and we haven't really spent much time talking about the impact of crypto. And indeed, as it becomes more and more widespread, how do you see that impacting the overall cyber threat landscape?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think I'm just going to take a step back first and just speak very briefly about blockchain analytics. So the company that I'm from, Chainalysis, we're a blockchain data platform. And essentially what we do is we collect data from the blockchain and from other sources. We then analyze that data. So we run our own algorithms, our own heuristics across this data set. And then we look to attribute these addresses to real-world entities. So if you've got a 30,000-foot view of the blockchain, essentially you'll see a variety of different entities. Some of them are legitimate, such as exchange and peer-to-peer traders, merchant service providers. But then there are these sort of illicit entities as well. So fraud shops, darknet markets, ransomware, so on and so forth. So we're in a really good position at Chainalysis. We've been in the business now for 10 years doing this, of attributing these different entities. So we can see trends across the sort of cybercrime ecosystem. So let's just look at a few. Every year we release something called the Crypto Crime Report. And last year, 2023, we saw, for example, a decrease in hacking. So in 2022, it was about 3.7 billion lost as a result of hacks, exchange hacks, exploits in relation to sort of DeFi protocols. And then in 2023, that actually decreased to 1.7 billion. So overall, that's good news. Now, contrast that to ransomware. So again, using our data, we can map these trends over the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years. And we've seen, other than 2022, sort of a continuous increase. Now, 2023 was actually a record year for ransomware. So nearly $1.1 billion worth of cryptocurrency was paid to different ransomware actors, so these different variants that operate across the blockchain, across the ecosystem, that are extorting small, medium-sized businesses, multinational corporations, stealing data from healthcare sector, critical national infrastructure, so on, and so forth. Now, we can then sort of look beyond that data and start to ask the questions, well, why is this? And we can see that these different threat actors across different jurisdictions are really starting to ramp up. Hence, there's significant increase. I think it was 150% last year alone. So then that hopefully then informs strategies in crime prevention, particularly in relation to ransomware. But like I say, from that sort of 30,000 feet view, we can see there's been a huge increase over the last 12 months, owing to various different factors. The double extortion method, the lowering of the barriers to entry as well. I think it was Recorded Future who said that last year, I think it was 530 different variants of ransomware that had popped up in last year alone. So the landscape has changed. We've seen increased victimization and an increased level of targeting through big game hunting as well.
And we hear so much, don't we, about a lot of these organizations having their own marketing teams and providing flexible payments and essentially running like multinationals.
Exactly, they're very effective businesses that are bringing in hundreds of millions of pounds worth of funds, and they have their own HR departments almost, their own marketing campaigns, and we saw that recently with Lockbit. Lockbit was a brand. It was targeted and taken down, but the question remains as that how effective was that takedown? The initial indication is very, very promising, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Thanks, Phil. And we'll come back to blockchain a little later on. Barry, you spend a lot of time with central banks and regulators. Out of interest, are there any central bankers or regulators in the room? No? I think you can speak freely, although maybe if they're in the room, they wouldn't tell you. Even though cyber is not the 100% of your focus in any way, just interested from your work with them, what you observe in terms of how they build up cyber resilience excellence, because so much of the conversation that we're having is organizations of a certain size, but in a way, a lot of these organizations look up to the central banks and look up to the regulators for so many things. So what lessons can they take on cyber resilience?
Sure. So our customers, as you say, are central banks and sector regulators at one end of the spectrum. And they are investing in modernizing their financial infrastructure and transforming that through technologies like digital currencies, instant payments, open finance, et cetera, and with that, they clearly have to bake in and build in cyber resilience from the get-go. So where do they start for that? They start by building on open international global standards that have been proven in multiple markets, that have formal security analysis papers, that have mitigated all of the known threat vectors and angles. And that is a key part of what we at Raidiam have been doing, is both contributing to the development of those open international standards, but then applying them globally at a whole market level, right? So that means every fintech or tech business across every licensed financial institution, every bank, every insurance company, every wealth business, for every consumer and every business every day. So you've got to get it right all the time at market scale. And therefore, you've got to use proven open international standards that have that established benchmark. So we've been pioneering the application here in the UK, and we've been building on that in other markets such as Brazil, in the Middle East, in Australia. And it's data agnostic, it's sector agnostic. And I think there's a huge opportunity. It's not just about building in resilience, but there's a huge opportunity for demonstrating trust and confidence on the global stage, and to drive innovation and growth and accelerate. Yeah, so I think that's about it.
Good, thank you. And what we'll in the second round, we'll maybe talk a little bit more about those standards and how the UK compares to the rest of the world. So we have time for round two for each of you. Cate, you alluded to this in a way earlier, but it would be great to hear from you a little bit more about whether cybersecurity is just the art of protecting organizations, or whether it's an integral part of a digital growth strategy. And if it's the latter, then maybe you can talk us through some examples where that has been done very well, and you know, what does integral really mean in terms of getting it right?
Yeah, you're quite right. I think it's integral to the digital growth strategy. And every business's growth now is a digital growth strategy. We live in a digital world. So it's kind of a non-negotiable that you need to do that in a safe and secure way. Otherwise, your customers, your clients are all going to vote with their feet pretty quickly. And we've also seen this in the shift, particularly in the cloud providers, but more broadly than that, from secure by design to secure by default, which has been driven by the US and is looking at, well, you should expect that the services provided to you as an organization are secure by default. So that's up to the large providers to give that to you. When you're looking at who does it well and what does good look like, there's a balance in protecting your organization between prevention and resilience. And the quip I made earlier around how many organizations have been attacked and just don't know it yet, as an organization, you have to be lucky every time. If you can rely on being lucky every time, great. But actually, resilience is more and more important, because that's what's going to build into your business, ideally, the ability to be anti-fragile, so that through going through an attack, through going through a disruptive event, your organization is stronger coming out of the back of that. So if you can design that level of resilience into your organization, you don't have to be lucky every time, because you come out of an attack or an event as a stronger organization, better able to cope with the future. So those are the organizations now that are taking more and more of the lead in terms of what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good point, and I always find, for those of us who do cybersecurity on a daily basis, that people tend to accuse us of being scaremongering and just sort of, you know, generating fear, and it's not about that. I mean, it really is just the reality of running your business on a daily basis, and as you say, learning from it, but also your customers and your clients will feel far better if they know that you're learning from it, because that's the basis for digital trust, which you speak a lot about.
Yeah, and of course you need systems that are secure by design, but you need processes that encourage compliance rather than consent and evade, because we're all human. We'll all try and find an easier, in our view, way of doing things. And people with a cyber-savvy mindset, so they understand what's important to your type of organization and what they individually need to do about that. And those are the things that if you can build that in together, then do the planning and exercising so you know what to do as an organization and as individuals in the event of a cyber attack, you're much further forward in terms of being a resilient organization and keeping the digital trust that your clients put in you.
Thank you. So let's assume that companies won't be lucky every time. So Andrew, thinking about getting those basics right, there is a myriad of information out there. Some of it is very good, City of London Police, NCSC, National Cybersecurity Centre, recently a platform that's I was shown the other day called the London Cyber Resilience Centre. Again, very, very good. What recommendations do you have for everybody in this room when it comes to just getting your cyber hygiene right, the basics?
Okay, so I guess in terms of kind of the current threats and what people are worrying about, we're seeing, as Phil said, 2023 was the year of ransomware, as every year seems to be for the last few years, but biggest in history. But what we've also seen is almost maybe a shift away from phishing, more a shift towards a lot of internet-facing applications and such like, just full of vulnerabilities, and those vulnerabilities being exploited at a very, very basic level. I mean, we're still in 2024 talking about some real basics. On the one hand, that's disappointing, but also putting a more optimistic spin on it. A lot of this is still very easily organized out. You know, we talk about AI and trends in AI. I don't think we're seeing a huge shift for criminals moving into AI at the moment. I think a lot are talking about it and are looking at it and experimenting with it, but they don't really have the expertise, the resources, or the access to big data themselves to really start to exploit it at scale. And frankly, also, why would they bother when they don't need to? If we're not patching, if we're not using strong passwords, if we're not using multi-factor authentication, why would they want to go to the time and effort of doing something a bit more clever and costly to them when they can just, you know, pray and spray, or spray and pray, as it were, a load of automated, very basic attacks? We're still not getting the basics right. If we start to focus on world-class basics, rather than worry about the really kind of Gucci high-end, hostile state or really high-end organised criminal groups, if they're going to come for you, they'll probably get you, unless you're an extremely capable organisation. Almost don't worry about that. Just focus on patching. That's still probably 50% of all successful attacks come through out-of-date software. Another 40% come through weak password, weak identity management, lack of multi-factor authentication. The number of organisations that still say, well, we don't want to make it more difficult for our staff to log on or do whatever. Well, frankly, you're just leaving your front door wide open, because the number of compromised... why would you go to the time and effort of hacking into an organisation if you can go and get a load of real-world credentials, a real username, a real password that's appeared in multiple data breaches around the world over the last 10 years and not been changed? It's really, really basic stuff. So there's a real kind of, I think, an optimistic message of just be really ruthlessly focused on the boring stuff, on the world-class basics. Make sure your senior leadership, or you, if you're a senior leader, understand that it's the boring stuff that will get you the results. The basic principle of crime prevention is not to build Fort Knox. Nobody wants to live in a bank or a castle, or probably not many people, because it's not very accessible or comfortable. You just want to live in a home that's slightly more secure than your neighbours, so your neighbours get burgled and you don't. This is no different. This is no different. You just want to raise those barriers that it's not worth the effort, that they just move on somewhere else. So patching, strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, antivirus, all that kind of basic good stuff solves 90% of your problems. So a lot of this is quite easily managed. And if you're a small or medium-sized organisation, or you don't have the in-house skills or expertise, come and join your regional cyber resilience centre. It's free. If you want to access some of the student services that can help test your systems to really understand where you need to improve, to maybe challenge your managed service provider with the evidence of where they need to improve, then we can help you with that. We've got the police cyber alarm as well, which is a bit of software that you can download and will actively seek out your vulnerabilities and also identify suspicious activity that we can then go and use that data to proactively target in an intelligence-led way, rather than rely on people reporting as crime, which is a very old-fashioned way of doing police business. So there's loads we're doing. Operation Fangtooth, I think Phil referred to, that was an NCA operation taking over, infiltrating the Lockbit ransomware site, completely compromised all of it and a lot of that network. There's going to be loads of operational activity off the back of that over the next few years. That's 25% of all ransomware. So that international collaboration and cooperation with law enforcement is really starting to have an impact. We need to do more of it, but in the meantime, focus on the basics, world-class basics, and you'll be in a good place.
Good. Thank you, Andrew. So the bad actors might be getting more sophisticated, but they'll still always try and find the easiest route.
Absolutely.
So Nina, I'm not sure whether this was a good idea to put you right next to Andrew, because my next question is, what's your view on how law enforcement agencies are dealing with all of the changes that are coming their way? And from where you sit, which is about the other side, What's your view on the
Yeah.
role that law enforcement agencies play? And I'm hoping you're going to say something really positive.
If not, we can swap
Yeah,
seats.
we'll swap.
Yeah, no, I think there is a lot of positive change actually, but what we are, when we talk about organizations generally, all of them obviously want to lessen the disruptions to their businesses, but at the end of the day, they want to onboard more customers, more good customers faster. And so I think law enforcement agencies also do understand that, and we have seen, we're here to talk about AI and cybersecurity, but we are really seeing a true push with the regulators that is driving toward regulation in AI globally, but also in the UK. There was a bill that was tabled in the House of Lords not that long ago. There are debates around it. Hopefully it will be accepted, but certainly regulating will help the organizations, but I think it's very interesting balance to strike between what that regulation will allow us to do and how will it help us actually protect ourselves or not, because obviously the criminals might not be doing that today, but they're going to do it at a certain point. And with that, I want to stress, as much as the criminals have a lack of skills and kind of shortage of understanding of AI, there is still, unfortunately, a little bit of a lack of skill with the enforcement agencies in this space. You can see the trends of recruitment and roles appearing that are kind of looking for SMEs in AI, but the unfortunate truth is that the big tech companies are still the ones that are getting the best talents in this field, given the resources that are available to them, given the funds that are available to them. And so I think for enforcement agencies, it will be really critical to get some of those crucial SMEs from the industry to help them kind of guide future policies and to be able to capture some of those malicious activities and criminals that are entering in the space.
Yeah, makes total sense. And I think we haven't got time now, but I think there are quite a few examples of that happening in the UK, and the more
absolutely.
that happens, the better. So a couple of last questions. Thanks, Nina. Phil, blockchain, you spoke about it before. What role does it play in hopefully improving the cybersecurity landscape?
For me, it's a question of data and data exploitation. Now, as I said before, by leveraging blockchain data and enriching it, it can really inform how law enforcement and the wider public sector really uses very much finite resources. So where can we target those resources to have the biggest impact? Whether that's fraud, whether that's ransomware, whether that's different hacking incidents. And we need to find a better way to exploit that data. And just, I think, on to Nina's point before, and I think she referenced DCPCU and various other agencies, I think there's a model there somewhere around public-private partnerships and data and intelligence exploitation. And for me, I think to get the most out of blockchain intelligence, we need to find a way to work better across the ecosystem to really exploit that intel, to disrupt offenders, to seize assets, secure and preserve evidence, prosecute. But there's also the crime prevention piece as well. So how can we use our data to sort of better inform and prevent victimization across a range of different crime types?
Thank you. And Barry, we'll finish on standards. You mentioned the importance of standards when it comes to having the right cyber resilience. How does the UK compare to the rest of the world?
I would say pretty favorably. The UK was pioneering in applying global open standards for open banking sort of 2017, 2018. And that is now enabling 320 organizations across the country to unlock new value and serve consumers and businesses better. It has stood the test of time. It's just had its 6th anniversary. That standard has evolved and is continuing to evolve. So FAPI, I'm going to talk about the standard and the open. So the standard is by name the Financial API Standard, or Financial Grade, developed with the OpenID Foundation. It took 7 years to get to version 1, so it took quite some time with industry. But because we've applied the best minds in industry to create something that's so robust, you can have the confidence to build on that standard. And the UK is well positioned to be interoperable and compatible with other global markets who are building on those same standards where secure by design, secure by default, it's built in from the get-go. And you can think about not worry about how, but worry about what you want to do, right? The actual innovative value, because somebody else has thought about the security and trust, and that's been built in from the beginning, as opposed to retrofitted at the end. So I think the UK is very well positioned.
Good, that makes sense. So we've come to the end of the panel. I would like to ask each of you, this is a quick fire round, 5 to 10 seconds max, please. We've spoken about AI in different guises in some of your answers. AI, good or bad for cybersecurity? Cate.
Necessary, because we have AI and we need AI to police AI.
Good if done properly.
Good predictive prevention is the way to go.
Good, but with the caveat that it depends specifically what crime type you're looking at. There's a lot of risk around the transformation of different fraud types being essentially volume crime, and these different crime groups, better utilising this technology to enhance their business models, which makes me quite nervous.
I think good. I think the potential and opportunity for AI-based approaches is going to be very interesting, but it needs to come with baking in cyber resilience from the start. So that investment to avail of emerging technologies needs to ensure the right investment to support the guardrails and the controls around that.
It's not often that you get a panel where everybody, A, agrees, and B, when it comes to AI, ends with a positive message, which I think is really, really encouraging. So we've had sunshine, we've had rain, sunshine again. That's basically a day in cybersecurity. Thank you so much to my wonderful panel. Really, really grateful for all of your views and for being here today. Thanks all for being here and sharing this last half an hour with us. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you so much.